大家好，我係蛙威跌廢話特發，今日想講講啦，Michael Jackson 啦，即係點樣係同愛潑斯坦案不單止係冇關係，即係甚至保護小朋友咧，即係離開呢個嘅愛潑斯坦個性愛島嘅。咁本身咧我就係想等到4月嘅時候咧，即係由嗰套佢個侄咧，即係飾演佢嗰個嘅自傳電影啦，Michael Jackson 嘅時候先再講。但係有時可能都費事等咁耐啦，不如而家一次過講下啦。按佢花名 Michael Jackson 可以睇翻我上一段片啦，即係取笑佢個整容嘅樣啦，等等。咁我最後附錄咧先講解佢2019年咧有 Living Neverland 嗰個所謂紀錄片咧有好多不實嘅指控，或者個紀錄片有咩問題嘅。第一部分就講解下咧，其實傳媒咧點樣係即係塑造到米高嗰個形象咧，可能係大花童啊，可能係好古怪啊，甚至係戀童嘅。咁但係原來事實就係咧，佢調翻轉嘅，所以好凄涼。咁我而家慢慢咧就係不斷拆解話俾你聽，傳媒點樣去誣衊佢，係點樣做一個形象咧，係誤導觀眾。6大美國媒體咧有5大其實都係猶太人創辦，或者係有猶太人咧係統領緊㗎。咁依家係先解釋一下。咁我之前咧喺 DD 嗰個影片嗰度咧，我講到佢嘅死咧都係撲朔迷離啦，同埋充滿疑點嘅，因為佢身邊嗰個嘅保安咧，其實就同阿 Diddy 係好有關係嘅。有興趣嘅話咧，可以睇翻我之前嘅影片。咁如常咧，我就縮細咗我自己先啦。咁慳啲時間，我直接播放啦，咁就會可能好啲嘅。有幾段片嘅。咁第一段片咧就係講到 Michael Jackson，應該呢個係2005年咗緊啦。佢離開 Sony 嘅時候，佢公開地咧同佢班歌迷講咧 Sony 嘅問題，同埋咧佢係為到 Mariah Carey 咧去辯護嘅嚇，企喺 Mariah Carey 嗰邊就指控佢個前夫咧係邪惡嘅人。咁呢度一輪嘴咧，佢7分鐘嘅裏邊係好值得講係咩咧？ Michael 做嘅好事，傳媒冇講過。Michael 有嘅錢，傳媒冇講過，即係強調佢係大花童，最後係破產咁樣啦，要住喺咧即係一個前合作伙伴嘅旅行車上面。但係咧，佢嘅身家佢死嘅時候咧，1.2億美金嘅音樂版權，當中包括披頭四啦、M&M 都係屬於佢嘅，即係 M&M 每年嗰個嘅版權費咧要俾阿 Michael 嘅，所以 Michael 唔係冇錢嘅，就算佢真係住喺旅行車咧，佢係想避世嘅啫。哇！諗下同主流媒體所描述嘅圖畫係完全唔同啊！主流媒體描述到佢咧戀童啦、大花童冇錢啦、窮光蛋啦、由天跌落地底啦。咁但係其實原來佢係有錢嘅同埋係為到啲弱勢發聲喎，係為到 Mariah Carey。咁我先睇咗呢部分先，然之後咧我哋再去到即係 Home Alone Macaulay Culkin 佢直接咧就係為到米高去辯護嘅。即係佢都話，如果唔係米高咧，佢可能已經去咗個性愛島度啦。咁呢方面即係更勝千言萬語啦，一個當年嘅當紮童星點樣瞓埋一間房都可以證明 Michael 冇對佢做任何嘢，呢個非常緊要啊嚇。
My opinion is, if he didn't do anything to me, I don't think he would have done anything to anyone else.
講真係嘅，佢係不善於表達自己嘅，解釋自己嘅。咁連阿 Home Alone Culkin 都係咁講噶啦，即係連阿 Home Alone Macaulay Culkin 都係咁講噶啦。咁佢係一個表演者，上台表演，載歌載舞嘅。咁但係佢都走出嚟咧，去睇下Mariah Carey 當年一個當紮嘅女巨星啦，即係同 Whitney Houston 齊名，所以佢哋可以一齊唱嗰首 When You Believe 啊嘛。係啊，好。不善辭令，但係都願意走出嚟去辯護下。佢同阿 Sony 拆夥之後咧，走出嚟插 Sony。呢個版本咧，我覺得好啲，冇咁嘈。但係冇中文咧。
The tradition of great performers from, and I really want you to hear what I have to say. The tradition of great performers from Sammy Davis Jr. to James Brown to Jackie Wilson to Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly.
致敬唔同人先啊！
These guys work really hard at their craft, but the story ends the same because the companies take advantage of them.
好啦，佢引咗呢一班嘅演藝界嘅名人啦，但係佢哋當中咧，即係可能都係悲劇收場啦，因為大公司咧剝削佢哋。佢而家喺度講 Sony 想剝削佢，但係反將 Sony 一關拎走咗咧 Sony 一半嘅音樂版權，所以 Sony 好憎佢。呢個都係促成佢殺身之禍嘅之一啊。
They really do. And Sony, being being the artist that I am at Sony, I've generated several $billion for Sony.
即係當佢合夥嘅時候咧，佢替 Sony 賺取咗數十億嘅。
Several billion. And they really thought that my mind is always on music and dancing and it usually is, but
即係嗰時 Sony 就認為咧，米高呢啲都係演藝人嚟嘅啫，咁就冇乜點樣防佢。佢話我都係諗住專心去演藝啫。
They never thought that this performer myself would outthink them.
即係會醒過去，冇諗過即係 Michael Jackson 可以咁反將一軍。呢一個部分咧，就不嬲主流媒體係冇講過嘅。即係米高同阿 Sony 咧，其實係一個好大嘅商業上嘅衝突，然後再拆夥而係一仗咧，其實係 Michael Jackson 贏咗嘅咁都係主流媒體冇乜點講啦。頭先我再講啦，或者睇翻之前嘅影片就係話主流媒體係邊個操控㗎其實都係猶太人。咁我唔係話要反猶你睇翻我之前嗰個分享，但係逢親坐低嗰啲高位嗰一種咧，都係一個集團嚟嘅都係一個聯盟嚟嘅。所以佢得罪咗一個咧，其實唔係得罪一個，係成個集團。如果佢仲係同嗰啲戀童者對着幹嘅時候咧，咁啊更加解釋到點解佢有殺身之禍。
There may be a group of people that want to get rid of me. They don't want me here anymore.
I don't understand. What do you mean? Talk to me.
I can't talk about it over the phone.
So we can't let them get away with what they're trying to do because now I'm a free agent.
好啦，自由身啦走咗出嚟嘅時候。
I just owe Sony one more album. It's just a box set, really.
即係可能係按協議咧去爭出一隻碟，即係睇 Sony 出完就完㗎啦
It's with 2 new songs which I've written ages ago. Because every album that I record, I write like literally. I'm telling you the truth. I write at least 120 songs every album I do. So.
即係不嬲為咗每一隻嘅唱片咧，去寫120首嘅，咁揀最好嘅。咁佢今次 hea 做咧，你要我出2首俾你咯。仲有啲舊貨倉底貨，你要我俾你。嗱呢句勁啊！亦都主流媒體不嬲冇講到嘅，即係佢離開 Sony 不特止咧。其實佢係擁有 Sony 一半音樂版權。頭先我再提啦 ，M&M 佢都有嘅，屬於佢嘅。即係 M&M 其實要替佢打工嘅。因為嗰時 M&M 咧唔尊重佢啊嘛，一興之下咧佢買起咗咧 M&M 嘅版權，所以每播 M&M 嘅歌咧都要俾錢米高嘅。即係就算米高死咗咧，咁佢12億嘅版權咧繼續喺度滾到依家30幾億。嗰數十億版權最後去咗邊咧？又自賣翻俾 Sony 喎，都唔 make sense 嘅。你明唔明我意思啊？即係如果你主流媒體描述到 Michael Jackson 咧係破產不善理財，咁佢點樣可以 outthink Sony 咧？點可以攞走 Sony 一半音樂產權咧？係咪啊？咁時不斷都係持有嗰個音樂版權喎。但係就主流媒體去形容到佢係啦，窮光蛋啦，不善理財啦。咁所以就係呢一點咧。已經令我更加唔信主流媒體啦，因為佢哋不斷咁誣衊咧 Michael Jackson 嗰個嘅形象 話係不善理財，其實唔係喎，好勁喎，其實冇錯。有時係影到入嗰個商鋪裏邊咧，唔使睇價錢，係咁賣係咁賣。喂，佢賺咁多，梗係唔使睇價錢啦，係咪啊？咁事實上，佢咪真係窮到窿住旅行車咧？事實上話俾我哋聽，唔係咯，佢係有錢地住旅行車。
And I'm leaving them, and they're very angry at me because of it. But I just did good business, you know.
勁啊！即係我係自由身，即係講真，你合則來，不合則分，好正常啫。咁你大公司不嬲咁樣係欺壓一啲嘅演藝人員嘅，咁而家你冇諗過，就係佢都為咗佢自己着想咧，可以反將翻 Sony 一軍，咁你冇去扶嘅喎。你講 Mariah Carey 啦。
So the way they get revenge is to try and destroy my album. But I've always said, you know, good art never dies.
即係就算 Sony 想點樣對付佢都好，哇！以佢嗰個名氣，即係佢叫做 King of Pop 啊嘛，全世界過百萬 fans， 即係你話要做低佢就做低佢咩？點知真係做低佢喎，就從佢嗰個明星嗰個咧拆毀佢，即係根本佢唔係一個戀童者但係嗰班戀童者咧又將自己嘅罪行咧強加於米高身上。因為之後就睇翻 Jeffrey Epstein 嗰個嘅電郵解密裏邊啦，就睇翻其實 Michael 都唔係其中一員，佢又冇去過性愛度然後仲有Home Alone嘅演員咧替佢辯解。
Thank you. I love Unbreakable. You know, and Tommy Mottola is a devil.
好啦 ，Tommy Mottola 就係1988至2003 Sony 嗰個嘅 CEO 啦，猶太人。咁清楚啲分我就當係暗猶太人咧，因為唔係好人嘅時候啊，叫做黑暗猶太人。
I'm not supposed to say what I'm gonna say right now, but I
呢個都係殺身之禍之一，即係你公開地咧去挑戰，你贏咗贏到盡啊嘛，係啊。咁人哋對家復仇嘅時候咧，你又真係冇去扶喎所以最後一陣間我睇下冇時間啦，即係當米高真係好驚嘅時候，同人講我電話唔方便，我有殺身之禍。米高當其時冇諗到咧，對方嗰個嘅網絡係咁犀利啦，即係佢貴為 King of Pop 佢都有錢㗎，但係都對付唔到咧人哋透過主流媒體咧鋪天蓋地嘅攻勢係咁不斷破壞佢形象係咁屈佢咧，即係戀童咧，佢要面對好多法律訴訟史稱咧睡衣事件即係嗰個期間咧，佢仲係傷咗腰咧喺醫院度嘅。但係法庭傳召佢嘅時候咧，佢冇得唔去佢着住睡衣，披住件西裝，即係拐下咁樣去咧，好凄涼。篤爆佢！當其時咧，嗰個年代未有手機嗰啲咁方便錄影嘅，就係啲手提攝錄機啦。佢話唔好拍，但係話冇所謂啦，拍啦。Getting Gangster 即係 Michael 咧係要將嗰啲惡棍繩之於法Getting Gangster 講真，佢呢一下咧真係贏晒嘅，離開 Sony 冇手尾跟，攞走佢哋一半嘅音樂產權。但係頭先都講咗啦，佢低估咗對方嗰個網絡。你諗下 Jeffrey Epstein 嗰個網絡，你諗下 Diddy 嗰個網絡佢自己一個人好難對付成個網絡。係好朋友嚟 Mariah Carey。咁 Mariah Carey 就係同嗰個 Sony 高層結咗婚，咁離咗婚之後咧就向佢屋哭訴。咁佢而家咧公開地咧即係睇下 Mariah Carey 辯護。哇！呢個但係人哋對家唔係善男信女嗰下難搞啊嘛。
She was crying so bad I had to hold her.
喊得好凄涼，攬實佢。
She said to me that this is an evil man.
個前夫係好邪惡嘅。
Michael, this man follows me, she said. He taps her phone.
跟蹤佢啦，又咧係偷聽佢嘅電話啦Tap her phone 咧，即係可能要去到屋企，叫啲人咧偷地裝一啲嘅 chips 喺個電話度先去偷聽佢啦。
And he's very, very evil.
好邪惡，即係你離咗婚，你都唔可以脱離佢嗰個掣肘啊！因為佢嗰個前夫咧就係個音樂人啊 ，Sony 個音樂界巨頭喎，所以其實你得罪咗呢個音樂人嘅時候咧，其實你都幾難喺個音樂界揾食㗎嚇。但係 Michael 咧就替佢發聲。
And he is a horrible human being. And we have to continue our drive until he's terminated.
哇！呢個字眼好強硬啊！即係要同佢差唔多抗爭到底，直至可以終結佢。個字眼好強烈啦，終結佢啊！咁但係所以依家調翻轉咧，人哋對家咧就終結翻佢啊，先破壞佢名聲，透過大眾傳媒啊拆毀佢名聲啦，又用唔同嗰啲嘅戀童案啦，要去身敗名裂啦。
We can't allow him to do this to great artistry. We just can't. I just want you to know I appreciate everything you've done. You've been amazing.
佢同埋班影迷，即係同班 fans 講，即係你哋咁樣支持我，好開心啦。咁佢啊誓死即係為到演藝人員嗰個嘅權益努力啦。啊，本身係停喺嗰度嘅啫，但係冇諗過對家咧係咁樣反攻佢啊嘛。咁佢過去咧唔同嘅 lawsuits 嘅譬如有1993年啦Jordan Chandler 就話Michael Jackson 咧就係侵犯佢啦，非禮佢啦。咁呢個嘅刑事檢控調查咧，最終係終結咗嘅，亦都冇起訴到嘅，因為證據不足啊嘛。咁但係就庭外和解，俾咗2300萬嘅。咁但係自此之後咧，其實 Michael Jackson 咧就唔想再庭外和解啦。你咁樣屈我咧，我點都同你係告上法庭，咪打官司咯。咁但係你點樣打落去咧，其實都攰嘅，所以最後咧，呢個又係俾錢 settle 咗最後又係俾錢 settle 咗。咁去到05年嘅時候咧，就唔係第三單啦，係有幾單咧，即係一次過咧就係控告米高咧係非禮molestation 非禮兒童啦。咁其中一個牽涉就係呢個人嘅 Gavin Arvizo 呢個嘅，就喺05年咧，佢就控告Michael Jackson 啦性侵添。咁最後結論係點咧？嗰個時候咧，嗰個男仔係15歲啦，話 Michael 性侵佢啦，就話 Michael 咧灌醉咗佢啦。佢哋唔想留喺嗰度啊 ，Michael Jackson 要留佢哋嗰度，又侵犯佢哋啦。但係個男仔背後咧，究竟係邊個指使佢咁做咧？咁咧就係 check 啦。咁首先呢個男仔咧，佢個童年都唔係好噶啦。即係佢個童年咧，可能都係俾人侵犯啊咁樣啦。但我一跳到去咧，嗰個問題先，因為嗰陣時咧05年係講到一個嘅紀錄片咁我話到警察咧訪問咗呢個男仔啦 Gavin 啦，咁之後咧就係逮捕Michael Jackson 哇！原來唔係幾單，係10單，就話佢侵犯細路仔，即係講到似層層咁樣啊嘛。即係你話1單2單就可以屈啫，哇10單咁就唔係真嘅。咁嗰時都有呢一種嘅形象嘅，即係好似一個大話講100次變咗真一樣咁咯。同埋分開2次去侵犯佢咁樣㗎。講到似層層㗎，我哋瞓喺張床度，然後就話 Michael Jackson 就話啦，男人咧要試下打飛機然後啦就教我啦，佢想教我，咁啊一齊瞓喺張床度啦，然後就開始捽我啦，又伸隻手入我褲浪啦，又開始捽我啦，我私處啦，然後替我手淫咁樣啦，去作證。佢話米高咁樣做咧，令到佢咧尷尬同埋咧係好混亂，我覺得。然後佢兄弟咧都確定有呢個嘅指控，佢見到成個過程。但係當然啦，佢啲粉絲咧，米高嘅粉絲梗係話佢無罪啦。咁最後係無罪嘅，即係其實佢講到呢啲男仔個屋企背景咧，其實都係想係誣蔑到係屈佢嘅啫。咁呢個都係好有可能嘅，向啲明星嗰度係屈錢。即係有時佢媽咪嗰種癲癲得得嗰種嘅反應咧，亦都嚟到陪審團腳步嘅。 所以最後陪審員咧就覺得呢個10單都係證據不足㗎，告唔入㗎嚇。
The only celebrity at the time in 1993 to come out and say absolutely not. Absolutely not. He never touched me. He never touched anybody. As far as I know,
There's 4 FBI agents waiting for me in the hotel room. And my mom's there and she's like, tell them what happened. And I'm like, what do you mean tell them what happened? And I sit down with them and they all get asked these super sexually exploiting, questions, backsided questions. And I knew that at my age already. And I looked at all 4 of them and I said, are y'all crazy? I said, what you think I'm gonna do? Tell you that Michael did something bad so that we can sue him for money? That's what I told him. I was like, you're crazy. And I looked over at my mom and I was like, are you serious, Mom? I was like, what is going on here? Why are you letting this happen? And she goes, well, I think something happened, I think something. I'm like, really? That man did nothing but be hospitable, kind, loving, giving, everything you could think of. We rode 4-wheelers for 5 hours, me, him, and Chris Tucker. Like, I knew Michael better than all of them.
Yeah, I believe
Even
everything that I've
Macaulay,
seen.
if it was Macaulay right now.
I'm not buying it.
Even if it was
I'm not
Macaulay
buying
Culkin sitting right here, he would tell you the same thing I did with the same assertiveness.
nothing happened. Nothing really. We played video games.
其實講真，當年嚟講咧，即係我哋睇啲案件咧，我哋都會覺得，你話你第1、2單可能都覺得，都係俾人屈嘅啫。咁你去到第3單嘅時候又有仲係不同嘅場景裏邊係非禮。咁其實嗰個時候我哋都會已經鐵定咗係咯，Michael 即係竟然有呢個咁奇怪嘅癖好我哋嗰時都會咁嘅。我未去到一啲超級死忠嘅粉絲，即係確信咧，米高係唔會咁樣去侵犯小朋友嘅。因為當其時咧，你有咁多唔同嘅lawsuits 嘅時候咧，訴訟，咁我哋好自然就會覺得，佢唔係有嘢都唔會有咁多單啦，即係我哋少咗呢個形象咯。但我哋就忽略咗係咩啊？我哋之前係冇呢一個嘅背景啊嘛。我哋原來唔知道米高係不斷係同 Sony 係對壘緊，05年，亦都係最高峰嘅時候咯，對壘緊。我哋唔知道，我哋只係知道原來有戀童案前身，但係其實佢同 Sony 嗰度鬥緊嘅喎，即係佢俾人屈嘅可能性咧都高喎。頭先我所講，佢而家所對壘嘅唔係一個普通人啊嘛，非是男信女嚟噶嘛，佢未至於可能係一個黑社會，但係嗰個人有錢，佢唔可以用黑社會咩？你明我意思啊？佢點樣可以 tap 到 Mariah Carey 佢前妻嗰個嘅電話，佢自己去做啊？梗係唔會啦，你明我意思啊？所以其實當其時米高嘅仇家咧，其實傳媒應該要公平地都去討論嘅，冇純粹就係話米高係牽涉性侵，咁但係個問題係，唔俾係對家屈佢。而家如果咁睇嘅時候，對家屈佢嘅可能性都存在啊嘛，呢個其一啦。其二就係佢除咗係同 Sony 對着幹之外咧，佢又替 Mariah Carey 辯解嘅時候咧，真係人哋有2個好實質嘅理由。第一，你攞咗咁多錢，一半嘅版權走，呢個係好大嘅一個嘅動機，想喐翻嚟。第二你替我前妻説話，你係當眾話我係一個邪惡嘅人，你話要終止我嘅邪惡行動，咁呢個係由一個好強烈嘅動機俾個人咧反咬你一啖咁所以又即係你話一個好大膽推測都係㗎啦，即係個暗以色列嗰個團體咧，嗰個網絡咧，佢本身就可能有拜魔鬼教佢係戀童各方面嘅行為嘅，佢一夠啱啦。就將佢哋嗰個罪行咧強加於米高身上。當其時我哋唔知有愛潑斯坦呢個人㗎，05年鬼知咩？我哋亦都唔知道咧愛潑斯坦案裏邊咧可以牽涉咁多樣嘢㗎嘛，有人質啦，有食人各方面啦，人口販賣咧呢啲嘅小事啦，已經變得侵犯未成年少男少女啦，等等等等。但係當我哋而家一睇到咧，即係原來米高係冇參與其中嘅，係米高有影到相， 特朗普都有影相，但係影相啫嘛。你喺啲名流嗰啲嘅場合 ballroom 裏邊影幅相好正常啫。緊要就係究竟佢哋電郵裏邊有冇啲嘅人肉販賣、人肉買賣啊嘛？有冇去過島啊嘛？米高同埋特朗普都冇去過個島，冇有啲人肉買賣啊嘛。愛潑斯坦同埋克林頓咧都證明阿侵係冇參與任何呢啲嘅性派對啊嘛，亦都冇去過島。仲有更加緊要就係咧，你睇翻阿特朗普做乜嘢喺呢段片嘅裏邊，我之前有講過嘅。特朗普一個好實質嘅行動啊，即係佢嘅行動咧係證明一切啊。係特朗普咧向 Palm Beach Police 報告嘅，係舉報愛潑斯坦。係特朗普咧形容過一個嘅 Ghislaine Maxwell 咧係邪惡嘅，亦都係特朗普咧同 FBI 合作去做線人嘅，喺 FBI 解密檔案我哋可以證實。係奧巴馬、拜登都冇解密過任何電郵，係特朗普第一個總統咧係解密300萬封電郵啊，相關文件啊、相片、影片嘅。特朗普咧喺第一任期嘅時候咧就堅持有一個90秒嘅 DNA 快速測試喺南部邊界裏邊測試乜嘢咧？
On the border, trembling 13-year-old girl who obviously, was just a couple times. You could tell her head is down. I've seen it myself. You can go to Yuma to see it. Is looking down, and a muscular 35-year-old pimp says, "I'm her dad." And there is no DNA testing that occurs. So instead, they just say, "Sign the paperwork. Here's your asylum."
到拜登嘅時候，即刻取消咗一個 DNA testing 啊！你話邊個係鬼啊？邊個有問題啊？你仲喺度屈特朗普？特朗普第一任期已經做呢樣嘢啦，要有呢個 DNA testing， 即刻可以90秒快速測試。嗰個嘅扯皮條，嗰個話嗰個係個小朋友嘅爸爸，係咪真係爸爸？係咪真係個血親？一 check 一目了然。
Of course, it never comes, and the girl is now enslaved in the United States. Under Trump, we do a DNA test, be like, "You're lying. That's not correct. We're going to find out who her parents actually are, because we're not going to co-sign to her becoming the worst thing that we could possibly tolerate."
所以我時都講咧，都用翻聖經所講嘅，你講就天下無敵啫。但係好樹結好果子，壞樹結壞果子，憑佢果子就知道咧，佢係一個好人定係壞人，係好樹定係壞樹。你講好容易啫嘛，你睇佢做乜嘢啊嘛？你睇翻 Michael 做乜嘢？佢當眾企出嚟，佢其實唔需要嘅，但係佢當眾企出嚟係守護 Mariah Carey 啊嘛，係嘛？佢當眾企出嚟話 Sony 你咁樣剝削人唔啱，佢當眾企出嚟喎。啊，當然依家睇翻轉頭咧，即係你今日留一線，他日好相見。佢真係完全唔留手唔留力咧，亦都種下咗禍根嘅，種下殺身之禍嘅。啊，蔡李強一樣啦，即係一樣講晒出嚟嘅。啊，咁但係我哋睇到佢哋嘅行動證明佢係咩人啊嘛，唔係即係透過佢講咩咯，要睇佢做咩咯。咁剩翻呢兩段片啦，就Home Alone嘅童星啦 Macaulay Culkin， 佢係替阿 Michael 佢嗰個嘅説好話嘅。咁佢事實上咧，即係有呢個身份，因為就係當擲嘅童星，佢都話如果唔係 Michael 咧，佢可能都俾人送咗去咧愛潑斯坦島嘅。咁當然呢段片會講得更加清楚啦，呢個就係好早期嘅，但係我覺得好值得聽。佢當其時咧應該係講到米高嗰啲嘅性侵案，咁我問翻佢嘅，咁啊替佢辯解嘅，咁啊冇講到呢個錄影時間係幾多啊？咁但係如果我哋睇咧 Home Alone 嘅時候咧，我哋 check 翻啦，佢有3集嘅，咁佢90年嘅時候，我覺得睇佢應該都係10年後啦，大個咗啦嘛，一係當係2000年咁上下啦，咁啊訪問翻佢。
Called me randomly, like out of the blue. You're just kind of like, "Hi, it's Michael." I was like, "Hey," and the thing is, this is after Home Alone. I actually admit.
即係佢成名之後，米高咧接觸佢嘅，因為始終可能大家係演藝界咧，咁又見過面，又有聯絡電話，咪會咁接觸咯。
Before I was doing Nutcracker at Lincoln Center, I was playing Fritz, and he came backstage one day, and I actually met him very briefly, and he kind of recognized me because it was after I'd done Uncle Buck, and so he kind of mentioned something, and then he calls me up kind of out of the blue. It's kind of just this weird random thing, and he was like, "Why don't you come over to my house?" And the thing is, I didn't really do it. Most people did. Most people like, "Michael Jackson," and then I mean, he was.
咁米高嗰個時候係 King of Pop 啦，即係一代搖滾巨星啦，咁佢邀請你上去屋企玩咧，反應啦。
Is a god to people, and to me, he was, I knew he was a pop singer, but beyond that, I wasn't one of the fans. I think that's one of the reasons why we connected, was the fact that, believe me, I call him a jerk all the time. I call him a fathead, this and that, he gets it.
佢真係連阿 Michael 睡房有2層，佢都知道啊。
It has like 3 bathrooms and this and that. So
3個廁所添，3個浴室。
when I slept in his bedroom, yeah, but you have to understand the whole scenario. And the thing is with Michael.
係啦，所以佢解釋俾你聽，你入去房瞓嘅意思咧，其實都有2層，有3個廁所，唔係一定要同一張床嘅。
I said he's not very good at explaining himself, and he never really has been, because he's not a very social person. I mean, you're talking about someone who's been sheltered and sheltering himself also for the last 30 years, or and so he's not very good at communicating to people, and not very good at conveying what he's actually trying to say to you. And so when he says something,
佢頭先都講咗，就係因為Macaulay 所講嘅，即係米高不善辭令就一樣嘢啦。佢係唱歌跳舞好在行，但係咪真係好善於社交咧？又未必嘅。即係起個招積掣啦，Home Alone嘅時候咧多嘴噶嘛，咁啊更加覺得阿 Michael 唔識得表達自己啦。
like that, people, he doesn't quite understand why people react the way that they do.
Why do you think he likes young people? So?
It's because the same reason why he liked me was the fact that I didn't care who he was. That was the thing. I talked to him like he was a normal human being, and that's what and kids do that too.
佢中意同細路一齊，咪中意同細路一齊就停喺嗰度咯，就唔係話中意同細路一齊等於戀童喎，大佬。
And because he's not, I mean, he's Michael Jackson, a pop singer, but he's not the god of, the king of pop or anything like that. He's just, a guy who's actually very kid-like himself.
之前有啲人都解釋咗嘅，因為佢係冇童年嘅，因為細個嘅時候咧，即係由 Jackson 5佢出嚟唱歌噶啦，細個就揾食噶啦，即係同阿梅艷芳嗰種好似嘅細個就要出嚟唱歌揾食嘅，咁變相就好似冇咗童年咁咯。即係而家接觸翻小朋友啊，或者整個 Neverland 同細路仔一齊玩咧，其實彌補翻佢童年所冇嘅嘢啊，就唔係咧好似嗰啲屈佢嘅人啦，好乞人憎咁樣咧，就係將佢哋嘅罪行咧強加於米高身上啊。
He wants to go out there and he wants to play video games with you.
Did parents encourage it?
It wasn't like they encouraged it or like pushing me upon it. It was just kind of like I wanted to hang out with them. Like I said, it's unfortunate, and it's a circus right now.
You think it's a bad rap?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, listen. Like, look what happened the first time this happened to him. If someone had done something like that to my kid, I wouldn't just settle for some money. I'd make sure the guy was.
佢個 point 好好喎，即係如果有人對我細路做啲咁嘅嘢，我唔會即係收錢了事，但係嗰班人係收錢了事啊嘛，係咪意思啊？嗰班人唔係要尋求公義啊，收錢了事，即係其實佢呢個解釋已經解釋晒啦。第一樣嘢。第二樣嘢，呢個昔日嘅童星都睇唔過眼。我去過阿 Michael Jackson 嘅枕室瞓過又如何咧？佢2層嘅，唔係同一張床嚟嘅，冇事發生 ，nothing， 解釋晒所有嘢啦。3電郵解密嗰個先緊要，所有污糟邋遢嘢，你諗住私下做私下講嗰啲先至可信。你諗住冇人睇到嘛？諗住冇人知嘛？咁先睇到嗰個人嗰個嘅真實一面，就唔係你企出嚟面對大庭廣眾啊，鏡頭前面講嘅時候，你梗係小心翼翼啦。你因為知道係對住大庭廣眾啊嘛，你私下講嘅先緊要。所以點解個電郵解密係咁爆咗咁解？但係竟然米高係冇份，冇話要去個島，冇話要係買人嚇，冇乜都冇。
And it just really goes to show. I mean, as soon as they got the money and they ran. I mean, that's really what happened the first time. And so. I don't know, it's a little crazy, and I kind of have taken a step back from the whole thing, because it is a bit of a circus, and, if the same thing was happening to me, I wouldn't want to drag him into it, and vice versa. So I try my best to keep a distance from it, but, like I said, it still was friendly.
好啦，有另一段咧，我自己覺得就係更加分析得更加好嘅即係由頭到尾咁講嘅。咁時間關係，我未必係播晒㗎啦。咁佢嗰時候嗰個 Neverland 啦。
I first met him, he kind of called me randomly, like out of the blue. You're just kind of like, hi, it's Michael. I was like, hey. And the thing is,
this is after Home Alone.
This is after Home Alone. I had actually met him before I was doing Nutcracker at Lincoln Center. I was playing Fritz, and he came backstage one day, and I actually met him very briefly. And he kind of recognized me because it was after I'd done Uncle Buck, and so.
I've had quite an extensive relationship. Is that true? I mean, 4 years? How'd you guys meet? Lincoln Center? You were in the Nutcracker?
Spent some time with him.
訪埋佢父母啊，
he reached out to
冇
me
事發生。
because a lot of things were happening, like, big and fast with me.
咁嗰時《Home Alone》又真係好好睇嘅，尤其第一集， 所以 Michael 就想識佢啊，傾個偈啊，大家都係演藝界，咁啊最主要就係一齊玩，即係冇嘢發生啊嘛。
Songs in school. That's great. So anyway,
I've never lost a water balloon fight.
啊，玩上滑梯，玩水戰，冇嘢。
Again and again.
I think that's
無論喺鏡頭前或者喺鏡頭外喺枕室內都冇嘢。
one of the reasons also why we got along is that like everyone's always thoroughly impressed by him, and so the fact there was somebody who was kind of just like treated.
仲有頭先咧，除咗Michael 咧，佢係得罪咗 Sony 高層啦，冇維護阿 Mariah Carey 上啦。咁由 Michael 更加招致殺身之禍咧，而家咁睇翻，就係、佢不單止係同暗以色列嗰個對著幹啊嘛。我會話咧，越多細路仔去 Neverland 玩咧，即係越少細路仔咧可以去到 Epstein's Island 啊！即係某程度佢根本就係同 Epstein 嗰啲係對著幹，以致咧招致殺身之禍。如果因為03年嘅時候咧，有去過樂園嘅小朋友咧告佢性侵啦。咁喺呢個嘅官司前身嘅時候咧，2005年咧個 Neverland 都永遠關閉，佢都唔再入去住啦。好啊，繼續飛先。咁其實都係講緊佢哋啲生活點滴啫。
Something like that. Over in the other room, we went out on the balcony, and that's when he came out with. He really missed not having a childhood, and that was.
唔係我哋猜測係佢出自佢把口，佢冇童年，所以其實都想俾翻咧童年咧俾其他童星，咁啊講得好合理。
Reasons why he ran around doing all these crazy things, because now he could do what he wanted, and he wanted to have the fun that he didn't get when he was a kid.
You know, or whatever. And like, he was the kind of person who'd like, yeah, been through the exact same freaking thing, and wanted to make sure that like I wasn't alone in that kind of.
Well, what happened at the house? That's what all these things
It's,
are
you know, that's what's so weird, you know, because
Yeah.
nothing happened to, nothing happened to, nothing happened to.
咁附錄咧講翻一個2019年啊，即係指控米高嘅 Living Neverland documentary 一套紀錄片啊。咁嗰套紀錄片有啲咩問題咧？個問題就係咧，作證嗰兩個男孩啊，當然係大個咗啦 ，Wade Robson 同埋 James Safechuck 啦。其實佢哋推翻咗佢哋以前咧2005年出庭作證嘅證供啊。嗰、個時候咧，佢哋維護米高啊做佢嘅人格證人咁樣啦。2005年嘅時候咧，譬如阿 Wade Robson 都成22歲噶啦，你而家去到2019嘅時候先走翻出嚟話，哎呀，我覺得受傷害啊，被性侵啊，所以咧要公諸於世咧。呢個前後矛盾同埋唔一致咧，我哋都係嚴重質疑佢嘅誠信啦。其實好多時咧，久不久就話，以前作證維護米高嘅人咧，依家改口啦，因為以前咧屈服於佢淫威之下咁樣。其實講真，凡係啲係改口嘅咧，其實都係啲唔可信嘅見證人嚟㗎啦。即係除非佢個改見證咧係對自己不利，係認罪，係自己講錯嘢。即係我覺得，除咗係依係一個後者係可信之外咧，佢而家係對自己有利咁樣，要攞錢嘅時候咧，我覺得呢啲全部收皮啦。仲有其他問題係咩咧？譬如話 Safechuck 咧，佢講過咧喺個 Neverland 咧，邊度係被阿米高性侵咧，或者係非禮咧？就喺 Neverland 嘅火車站啊，不止一次啊嚇！喺1988至到1992年之間，但係問題係咩咧？個火車站咪要去到1993年先起好喎。如果按翻個證供就係話1988年去到1992不斷被非禮咧。嗰個係咩火車站咧？絕對唔係 Neverland 嘅 train station 喎。
I was so happy he died.
同樣啊 ，Safechuck 佢自己媽咪咧，佢講到即係實牙實齒，話哎呀米高死咗啦，真係開心啦啊！佢終於唔可以再傷害任何小朋友啦。坦白講，如果佢真係真心咁信咧，有時唔出奇嘅。我點咁講咧？有時女性咧，或者有時人咧太主觀去諗一樣嘢嘅時候，佢當嗰樣嘢係真，所以有嘅情緒都係真嘅。但係係咪事實咧？唔係嘅。即係舉個例啊，如果你阿媽覺得你偷嘢咧，佢就好憎你，好嬲你，佢覺得係你偷咗佢錢，咁你百詞莫辯嘅。有時我覺得呢個 Safechuck 媽咪嘅情況都係咁。同樣啦，呢個媽咪嘅説法咧，同阿仔嘅講法同樣地係互相矛盾嘅。阿仔就話咧，到佢大咗嘅時候咧，先大個醒覺咧，原來我係被傷害、被侵犯，我蝕晒底，我冇話過俾任何人聽㗎。咁佢媽咪又點知道阿仔細個嘅時候俾人侵犯咧？係咪啊？從佢媽咪嗰個證詞裏邊，佢係好早已經知道阿仔被侵犯咯。再聽翻咧 Joe Rogan 所講咧，如果你真係你班家長 知道咧米高有特殊癖好，咁你仲 send 細路仔過去俾佢，咁呢個解釋唔到喎。反而更加調翻轉，我相信 Home Alone 所講咧 ，Macaulay Culkin 所講咧，
Nothing happened.
反而係阿米高唔識得保護自己，即係放喺一個咧好不利嘅位置，佢冇辦法證明自己清白，呢、個先係個問題啊嘛。佢太信人啦。咁啊 Neverland 紀錄片咧，仲有啲咩問題咧？即係頭先我講咗啦，即係紀錄片兩個男主角 Wade Robson 同埋 James Safechuck 咧。佢哋嘅證詞啊，係同佢2005年嘅時候前後矛盾啦。仲有嗰時佢2005嘅時候係成年人嚟噶嘛，你妨礙司法公正嘅喎，嗰時講大話。所以幸好咧，佢哋就冇勝訴到嘅，所以仲有米高嘅基金咧就冇被騙財啦。咁頭先都講咗啦 ，Safechuck 咧佢話佢放喺 Neverland 嘅火車站多次被性侵啦，但個時間就唔吻合翻火車站落成時間。咁佢講嘅時間呢，個火車站都未落成啦。咁 Robson 咧係幾時反口咧？係2013年啊，即係佢30歲嘅時候咧就反口啦。咁頭先講咗 Safechuck 啦，同埋佢同媽咪咧嗰個講法係唔一致之外咧，咁 Wade Robson 咧佢都有佢唔一致嘅地方嘅。佢話咧佢除咗喺 Neverland 嗰度咧被非禮啦，佢有一次喺個 road trip 咧係去大峽谷嘅 road trip 裏邊咧，屋企人冇陪同嘅，咁佢呢個嘅 road trip 度咧就俾 Michael Jackson 咧係性侵。Sexually abused， 但係抵死 Robson 嘅媽咪咧喺93同埋2016嘅時候咧都起誓作證咧，佢話聽到 MJ 嘅歌就會反胃啊，點知俾人哋影到佢啦，佢又教 MJ 嘅特別舞步喎。
To Robson, did Michael Jackson ever touch you in a sexual way? And you responded, never, no, correct? Correct. And that was a lie, correct? And you now claim that that was a lie, correct? That was not the truth, yeah.
有矛盾咧就好難叫人信佢啦。咁呢個咧60分鐘嗰度咧就訪問咗，即係阿 Michael Jackson整一個樂園啦 Neverland 啊嘛。咁啊訪問呢個員工見到啲乜嘢？嗱講真，點解我對呢啲有保留咧？講真，去收錢去屈 Michael Jackson 都可以噶嘛。但係調翻轉你嗰啲電郵咧，你諗住冇人睇到嘅時候，嗰啲先真實係嘛？即係你問我所信嘅時候，我梗係信咧，即係個電郵解密係 Michael Jackson係冇牽涉任何性侵案啦。咁而家何況更加咧？即係 Macaulay 佢走翻出嚟去解釋翻成個過程，尤其是佢嗰時初生之犢不畏虎，佢都唔知 Michael Jackson 係乜水，傾我 pop I don't care 係啦。咁我嗱時間我放喺度啦，所以我就今日咧又係你當係拋磚引玉啦。再一次解釋點解我信米高我都解釋翻點解當初我係被主流媒體誤導我信米高身有事。因為你一而再再而三就會覺得一定有嘢啦，係咁俾人告就係咁咯，停留咗喺嗰度。但係咧，傳媒就冇完全報導所有事實啊嘛。所有事實就係原來米高好有正義感喎。所有事實就係米高原來係 outthink 即係反將呢個 Sony 一軍嘅喎，醒嘅喎，唔係大花童嚟嘅喎。同埋佢 Neverland 嘅裏邊唔係為咗方便自己戀童佢只係想俾翻童年咧嗰班同性嘅或者小朋友啫。所以更加黑人憎我哋就會睇到咧，其實嗰班人將自己嘅罪行咧強加於米高身上，屈咗佢咁多年。咁而家都可以預測埋咧4月嘅時候咧，Michael Jackson 嗰個嘅紀錄片咧，應該係冇晒呢一部分㗎啦。咁其實就好可惜嘅，因為其實 Michael Jackson 佢點樣去忠於自己又替 Mariah Carey 出頭，又替其他演藝人出頭話嗰啲係大公司剝削。咁你一部分冇咗嘅時候，其實變咗係冇咗 Michael 正義嗰一部分。我預測係冇咗啦，咁就到時拭目以待，究竟個 Michael Jackson 嗰個傳記電影啦，揾翻佢個阿侄拍嘅用個侄去模仿翻阿叔叔咁樣啦。咁究竟有冇講到佢呢一部分咧？講幾多咧？咁啊，拭目以待啦。咁但係我哋喺呢個過程裏邊，我哋睇到嗰個絕對邪惡呢個肥婆點樣屈佢你任佢噏㗎啦。咁你依家60嗰啲都係左傾媒體嚟㗎嘛，左傾嗰啲全部喺晒，即係電郵解密裏邊有份㗎啦。咁所以佢哋都係有份咧，一班幫兇咧點樣去誣蔑Michael Jackson 嘅。咁我哋睇到個邪惡係非常之邪惡。咁所以我哋都翻去係Charlie Kirk 所講咧，即係我哋唔好信，亦都唔好信晒，即係主流媒體所講咯。我哋要自己 fact check 啦。如果歡迎以上嘅分享咧，請 like、share、subscribe，多謝各位，拜拜。